We couldn't think of an intro for this episode, so welcome to Tabletop Shop.
Hello, and welcome back to the Tabletop Shop. I am one of your co-hosts, Mr. Nate Clark, and as always, seated roughly halfway across the globe from me is Mr.
Sphere.
Cody Pennington.
Hi, gents and ladies and gents.
Cody.
Speaking of halfway across the world, Nate, when are you going to be not halfway across the world or hemisphere or whatever you call this thing?
With any luck, within a few months from when this is recorded, not from when it's released.
All right. I feel like a year ago you said basically the same thing, but that's fine.
This could certainly be true. Okay. Cody, I have a question for you.
Okay, yeah.
So recently, both you and I, unrelated to each other, purchased different expansions for the same game. So I just have one question for you, Cody. Why did you purchase the Agora expansion for Seven Wonders Duel instead of the Pantheon expansion? Walk me through your process.
Okay. Well, it looked fun.
Than Pantheon?
Funner. We'll probably actually still end up getting the Pantheon. But primarily, I noticed that, like, looking through the art on Pantheon, it's, like, considerably more risque than, like, a lot of general board games. I was like, let's just stick with Agora for now. Maybe we'll censor Pantheon at some point. I don't know.
You think so? I honestly haven't even noticed it. Really?
Oh, really?
Huh.
I was just looking through, like, the BGG stuff. Like, I don't like the posted pictures for, like, some of the cards and whatnot.
Okay. Well, I'll have to go look because I haven't even noticed. Okay.
What are your thoughts on that? Because I basically did the same thing to Blood Rage, because that one gets pretty.
I don't think
pretty risque. I know probably most of our audience thinks I'm an odd fuddy-duddy that I would like to censor certain material that comes inside the home, but hey, suck it and deal with it.
Yeah, yes. Just what they would expect you to say in this context. I think how I feel is that I would say definitely no nudity. And sure. The risque, I would just take case by case. It would depend on how interested I was in the game. And then it would also, like, if I have kids in the future, it would also factor into what games I allow them to play at what age, possibly. I don't think I would ever mark up a game, though. Like, I don't think I would ever block anything out. No.
Definitely loses its resale value at that point if you decide you don't want to have it anymore.
But hey, then you just trade it, right? So.
Hey, exactly. I don't know what you're talking about, man.
Well, I picked Pantheon for a much more legitimate reason, objectively legitimate reason.
Please.
Which was that I felt like it didn't mess with the core of the game too much. Agora feels like it gives a much bigger kind of shift of focus to Seven Wonders Duel, whereas Pantheon felt more like a kind of supporting expansion that gave some more flair and a bit of a twist. After playing it a couple times, I really enjoy it, and I think it's great with it. What are your thoughts on playing? I don't know how many times you played Agora, but what are your thoughts on it?
I've only played it once at this point, but honestly, having played it and then examining like what the content would be provided for Pantheon, I'm actually happy I chose Agora just for like gameplay reasons. I guess sort of for the opposite reason of what you just said. Like, I understand that Pantheon doesn't mess with the game too much. It seems like primarily just adds some more interesting card dynamics. But Agora adds like this whole ongoing senator system where you can, if you control like a certain section or like Senate chamber, then you have an ongoing bonus and ability, which can really pay off if you can plan around that. And I just really like the additional layer of cool beans fun.
Sounds very much like the Turmoil expansion for Terraforming Mars, which also is one of the expansions, one of really the only expansions for that game I still have not gotten because I don't like such a big shift from kind of where the focus of the game was, and now it's really like being shifted. Instead of things being added in, you're actually kind of shifting the focus. I think eventually I would get Agora probably, but I also am very happy with Pantheon. So we will just have to do some kind of ultimate mashup next time we see each other.
That would be cool. Kind of the sad thing though is that you can only play with 2 players. So it's like I don't know. Anna and Kirsten would kind of just have to hang out and watch while you and I have a showdown.
They can
with
play
both
Hanamakoji
expansions.
next to us.
Hey, there you go. That's a
Hey.
good idea.
All right.
Hey, well, speaking of expansions, I just want to
Okay.
throw in there that we just got the Ares Expedition expansions, or 2 of them.
Okay.
One of the 3 that was just released. Well, go ahead.
I thought there was only one, and then you mentioned there were like multiple. So what's with that?
There are 3. It's sort of funky. If you go on Board Game Geek, you can look up Ares Expedition. Like you start typing it in, and then it has this autofill suggesting like all 3 of the expansions as one entry. But then you can also type in individually each of the 3 expansions and look at them more specifically.
So it's almost
And
like
I think they
were all released at the same time.
were, or at least pretty close to it, because I want to say about the time they were coming out, I was looking on one of the websites, and 1 or 2 of them you could order, but it was like the other one wasn't quite out yet, I guess. So it was this weird staggered release, I think, if I am correct. But one of them I just wasn't interested very much in getting. It turns Ares Expedition into a co-op game where you're like fighting against these, I don't know,
Martians.
Earth or Mars shattering crises that are showing up, and I just wasn't that interested in that game style for Ares Expedition.
Yeah, get that out of here.
Yeah, so I got the other 2, which like add some fun stuff. I actually haven't even opened them yet. Nate, in our game room, we now have a shelf of games that we haven't played yet that we need to play, so that whenever Kirsten and I go in there to play a game and we sit down, we can just look up at the shelf.
Wow.
Instead of trying to decide like, oh, what should we play? Like, okay, no, we have like 5 or 6 games that we still need to play.
You've actually reached that stage now. Because I feel like I don't see myself reaching that stage for a long time where I'm like almost buying games faster than I can play.
Sure. Well, the thing is, for being gamers, as much as Kirsten and I are, we really don't play that many games that frequently. I mean, we did just come out of a really busy work season, so I think we'll be able to start playing more games. But I suppose it's not a habit that's as drilled into our lives. Like if we're in an evening and we're tired, usually we're going to end up doing something more like on the couch instead of at the table. Which I feel bad about, and we're trying to work on. We're trying to become better gamers, man.
To whom do you feel bad to? Yourself? Me?
I just feel lazy.
Too lazy to play a game.
Yeah, no. Well, that's why I feel bad. I feel bad to myself. Then I also feel bad to our wonderful listening audience who want to hear about cool games.
Well, Cody, have you played anything new since we last recorded?
Nate, yes, I have. Because of that precedent where we set a section of the shelf with games that are new that we need to play, we ended up playing Kalis 1303.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, boy. Okay. And I liked the game. It's definitely a unique spin on worker placement. It's almost like I guess it reminded me of Architects of the West Kingdom a little bit, because you have a bunch of workers that you don't necessarily get back like every season, like viticulture style. You have a pool of up to 15 workers that you can have, and I think you start the game with it depends on the player count, but it's like 10 for a 2-player game, I think. And then you spend them doing stuff, but after they're spent, they actually go over to a location called the camp. And this is just like a holding place for your workers. And then every new round, you will always automatically get just 3 workers back. But then there's certain actions that you can take over that round that like allow you to prepay or pre-purchase some of your workers back, so then you will get them returned to you. It's a nifty, odd little concept. Like I said, it's pretty similar to Architects.
Sounds a little complicated.
It really isn't that complicated. I mean, the game, if you're going to trust BGG weight scales, which I know Tom Vassell hates it, but I kind of rely on it pretty frequently. I think Kalis was like a 2.78 compared to Castles of Burgundy is like a 3.0.
Castles is a
It's
3.
like
Wow, okay.
yeah, it's like a little bit lighter.
I don't
But
know.
the other main way it functions differently is every game is different because as you play, you're putting out new areas that you can place workers. It's not just like the same pre-printed things or like after a certain amount of time new places get unlocked. It's the game has a randomized setup for some starting locations. There are some pre-printed areas that are always there and always available, and then a few that you kind of flip over. And then there's all these buildings that get put up above the board. So one of the actions you can take is to build a building, and buildings are the worker places. And when you build a building, you now own that spot. So if any other player goes on that new placed building, you actually get a little bonus, kind of like Dune Imperium. However, if you go on your own spot, you don't get the bonus, which is kind of sad. But the board is like this little trail of blank spots going up towards, I guess, the finish line, up towards the castle that you're contributing to. So every time you build a new area, you put it out. But you build whatever spot you want to build. Like there's a pool of buildings you can choose from.
Okay. So depending on the strategies that players are choosing, the actual spots available in the game are different from game to game.
Yes. Which has its own unique dynamic in and of itself because you may start realizing throughout the game, like, okay, we're kind of lacking in wood as a resource. That's like we need a lot more wood each round. So you might want to build the wood spot. But if you now own the building that gives wood, you can still go on it and get wood, but you aren't going to get the bonus for owning it because other people have to go on it for you to get the bonus. So it's this weird dynamic of I want to increase this pool of resources for the game that I can access, but then I'm not as rewarded if I'm going on my own spot. You know what I mean?
Well, if you're just tuning in, folks, welcome back to the Kalis 1303 podcast.
Hey, you asked if I played a new game, bruh.
Okay, I will say it sounds like it has some novel concepts. Definitely looking forward to playing it. And it even sounds a little similar to some ideas I had for a worker placement game. So I might need to play it and then rethink my life. So,
well, do that. And then I also played Lord of the Rings deck builder game, but the Two Towers.
Ah, yes. How so
version.
Different, I'm sure.
It played differently. The cards are balanced a little bit different, and it adds another one or two additional mechanics.
By different, do you mean better?
Yes, okay. I felt like it was better balanced, and that's my cool story. Nate, what have you played this week? No, we're not doing that anymore. We decided that that's boring. People don't care. We're doing. Have you had any new games?
And I have. Yeah. So one thing already been mentioned was the Pantheon expansion for Seven Wonders Duel. I think it's a great addition. Not too extreme, but just a nice little twist. I also had the chance to play in its entirety Micro Macro Crime City, which is almost not even really a game. Like I feel like the being called a game. I don't know how you define a game, but this is literally
that's deep. That's deep, man.
Let's not even get into that right now. But literally, all that's in this, what some might call a game, is just a huge map, and by huge I mean like a square meter, like huge, and then just like cards. And so there's like
let me
16...
just say that a square yard and a square meter are different.
Well, it's roughly, it's in that area, and so there's 16 different cases, and the cases just give you prompts, like questions basically to help you solve different cases. And the map is entirely all black and white, kind of sketched section of a city. And yeah, you use the cards to kind of trace people and figure out, what. Usually you start with a dead body, and you have to figure out, okay, you can trace the person's steps. So you see their dead body, and then you look in the area for them alive. It's like, oh, there they are. They're walking. Okay, they're walking this way. Or they were driving a car this way, and then here they are, crashed in the car, dead. And so you trace their steps back, and you see the people they interacted with. and you follow those people back and see if there's anything suspicious that they're doing, or and so you're kind of playing the story backwards to figure out what happened and trying to put the pieces together and link stuff throughout the city. So it's an interesting experience. It's definitely a one-time kind of play. Like once you've done all the cases, you're done.
Oh, really?
It's kind of like any detective type game. If it comes with preset cases, you can only really do them once, right?
Good point.
But it was fun. And then I also was able to play actually a top 100 game, even a top 50 game, I think.
What?
You already know what this is, actually.
Oh, actually, I have a guess.
What is it?
Can I guess? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Cascadia?
That's correct. Cascadia.
Aha.
I was actually never really interested in this game because it showed up a lot on Dice Tower lists, I feel like, and it was either nominated for or won the Spiel or something. I don't know. But every time I looked into it, it was like, it just looks kind of plain. It just looks kind of a little too simple and straightforward, and it's not really that attractive. It doesn't really look that nice. And so I just kind of always passed on it. But yeah, I had the chance to play it, and it's definitely not bad. I think it's very simple, and it is very straightforward. You're basically drafting tiles and animal tokens. They're kind of like paired up in groups. Like there's like 4 tiles and 4 tokens that are randomly put together, and you have to draft them in their groups basically, and then add them to your map. And then there's ways that the tiles score depending on the territories, but then the tiles also tell you which animal tokens you're allowed to place on them. So it would be anything from 1 to 3 different types of animals out of the 5 available. And so all the 5 animals score differently, and so how you place the tiles and the tokens on your map, trying to score your animals and meet the requirements to score lots of points and all this kind of stuff. So it's a fun puzzle. I'm very bad at it. Anna and I have played it 4 times, and she's beat me every time. But
not good for your KD ratio, man.
No, it's not. I have not killed my wife. No.
Please don't.
But
anyway,
it is a pleasant game. It's a fun little puzzle, and there's enough variety in it to come back to it every once in a while, I think. So I can see why it's such a crowd pleaser. And then last but not least...
Wait. I just have one question for you then.
Okay.
Does this make you interested at all in acquiring Calico?
See, I've also looked into Calico, but I heard that Calico is a... How do you say this? How do you assign this attribute to a game? It aggravates the analysis paralysis in people. I've heard that about Calico. And so I don't struggle with that too much, but Anna definitely, this is why she beats me in games, I should mention, is that she thinks ahead much, much further than I do. But that also tends to result in some analysis paralysis occasionally, and sometimes very severely. And so I've always kind of just stayed away from Calico for that reason. But maybe sometime. Okay.
Cool beans.
Before I was so rudely interrupted, last but not least, is a tiny little card game from Oink Games. This is called Scout. This one was not... So Cascadia was very approachable. It was easy to understand, and it was very straightforward. Scout was the exact opposite. I watched a full 8-minute video on YouTube on how to play Scout, and I still didn't really understand. And this is just...
Really?
It's just a deck of cards and a few little tokens, And so I was like, man, I almost was discouraged to the point of maybe I won't even bother, But I was like, no, I should try and figure it out. So I also found a PDF rulebook online, and I was really puzzled out and figured it out. And it's a little awkward. The first entire game of it, we didn't really know what we were really doing. We were just kind of following the rules. But it's kind of like a trick-taking game, except there's no set tricks. So all the cards are double-sided. And so when you get all your cards, you can either keep them the way they are, or you can flip them upside down and keep them that way. Because you can't rearrange, you can't resort the cards in your hand at all. The way you're dealt, you either get them one way or you flip them up and you get them the other way. And that's how it is for the rest of the game. And then you have to play cards from your hand in that order. And you're kind of one-upping the other person's trick, always trying to one-up it. So if they play a 4, you try and play something higher. And then they might play a pair, or they might play a run or something. And so you're always trying to one up the other person, but you have to keep your hand exactly how it is. And so how you take cards out, so like if you have 2 threes that have a 4 in between them, you might try and get rid of that 4 because then it pushes your threes together and you have a pair of threes, which is stronger, obviously.
Yeah.
So you're kind of, the way you play your hand, you're thinking ahead, trying to make your hand better by getting rid of cards from it. But then if you can't play a card, you can also like put a token in and take a card from the middle to make it easier to beat and to improve your hand. So it was really funky, and it's kind of hard to explain, but we've played it a few times now, and it's actually a lot of fun. So yeah, good little card game. Yeah.
Yeah, Scout came to my attention via the Boardlandia like March Madness bracket thing.
Yeah, right. That's right. It was on there. What did it do? It beat out 3 sisters, I think, in the first round, and then it like lost to Frosthaven or something. But
I thought it won a couple brackets. I thought it did pretty decently, but either way, it pointed me just to checking it out. It's like $1.99 on the Geek.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, this must be a pretty good game. And then I just looked up the pictures of it and the description.
Cards.
And I was like, it looks like we've got another The Crew situation on our hands, it looks like.
No, it's nothing. This is 10 times better than The Crew. All right. I will stand by that to my grave.
Here's the deal. If The Crew is a value of 1 out of 100, that makes Scout a 10 out of 100.
I would argue, Cody, that it makes it a 200 out of 30,000.
Ah. That's good.
All right. Oh, also in passing, I played a board game rendition of the worst card game ever made.
That sounds exciting.
The worst card game ever made being Phase 10. I played the board game version of Phase 10, and
There's a board game version?
It is slightly, but still unbearably, like it's slightly better, but still like intolerably bad. So that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you for taking the time to tell us about that, Nate.
Let's get on to our game of the week.
All right.
Okay. Game of the week is something that I actually don't know how many times you've played it, but I know you've played it more than me because you own it and I've only ever played it with you. So I will give you the joy, or rather the chore, of introducing and explaining this game.
How about the honor, the privilege even?
I would never.
The majesty, the grace? Throw some other nouns at me here. Any nouns are fine.
I'm just gonna plead the fifth.
All right, sounds good. Azul is a game. I'll speak for myself here. I think we have some similar approaches to it, but I'll let you get to your intro to the game. I was never interested in this game, and then I bought it for some reason, and then I became interested in the game.
Hey, you should try this with Scout.
You should I?
Yeah. I actually enjoy the game, but okay.
Think so? Okay. I mean, it can't be that expensive, right? If it's small.
Oink games are kind of spendy. I think in general it's like $15 everywhere. For a deck of cards, it's a bit overpriced, but
yeah. But for a game, that's not terrible. No. Anyway, this is not the Scout podcast, Nate. Azul. Azul. It's got some weird little backstory or something of how you're like a tiler, in the words of Z Garcia, tiling like the princes or wherever this is from.
It's very important to the game to understanding the game and playing
it's super important. Like if it's an abstract game where if you don't understand the history and the complete backstory and the era, the game will make no sense.
It just falls flat.
And I'm not. Yeah, I am not serious in any way.
Never.
No, the faux show and abstract games, screw the backstory. You don't need to worry about that. It is a pretty looking game because you are producing a grid of pretty tiled pieces that honestly, how good it looks has no bearing really on how well you do at the game. There's a scoring system within the game, and it really just comes down to math and thinking ahead. So you've got depending on how many players you're playing with, a selection of, I think they just call them factories. It's just a weird colored disc thing that you put 4 little starburst looking game pieces on top of.
Yeah,
And then
Starburst, no kidding.
yeah, on your turn, you get to choose from one of those discs and take all pieces of a single color. And basically, almost Castles of Burgundy style, load them up on part of your board to be placed later. Yeah, maybe Castles of Burgundy isn't the greatest example. It's the one similar thing I could think of where you load up a piece and then place it later. But on the
No,
left side of your board, there's
yeah, that's Castles Burgundy.
yeah. You know what I'm saying. On the left side of your board, you've got 5 rows that you can fill pieces on. Rows with values up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And as soon as you have filled up one of those rows with all pieces of one color, well, maybe not as soon as. Once you have done that, at the end of that current round, the front piece will move over onto your board and then score points. And it's basically just a Scrabble scoring system. So for every connected piece horizontally and vertically to where you put down that piece on this 5x5 grid, you score a point. And there's some additional end game scoring conditions where if on this 5x5 grid you're able to have a completed horizontal or vertical line, or if you have all 5 spaces filled of a given color, you will get additional end game points. And that sounds incredibly boring.
I was
and honestly,
just gonna say that.
I can't. That is the game right there. Like, there's additional tactics that you're definitely playing with, tactics and long-term strategy, because when you take a piece off of a factory or take pieces, you shove the remaining pieces into the center of, I was going to say the board. It's just the table. There is no board. You have a personal player board. And where that gets interesting is the more that happens, that center spot is now a spot that you can take pieces from. So you can actually help someone out by giving them a whole bunch of pieces of the same color that they can just take in one move. But then you can also hurt people because you can force them to take pieces that they don't want, and then they start scoring negative points for them.
Yeah, I think
reasons, and I don't want to get into explaining that.
If you really want a good chance at winning this game, it really pays to pay attention to at least what the next person, the person to your left, at least what they're focusing on and trying to thwart.
It really does. It's super interactive in that way.
Yeah, in a hateful way, right? In a kind of a hate drafting way.
Well, sometimes not, because there's some occasions where maybe there's 2 colors of pieces that you want to get. Actually, never mind. I think the example I was just about to give is basically just hate drafting.
It is. It's just yeah. It's just, they get something good either way, but give them the worst of the good.
Yeah.
Okay. Obviously my approach to the game was also similar. It looks boring, but for some reason it was popular. Mm-hmm. And I didn't buy it impulsively. But I played it when you did. And I guess you haven't
played it impulsively.
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe you had to coerce me. I'm not sure. But I don't even know if you've said how you feel about the game yet, but I was definitely not very impressed with it.
After playing it?
Yeah. Well, I think I've only played it twice, really, and...
Dude, why is this our game of the week, then?
Well, no, it's good to have opposing views sometimes, right? I won't go out too much on what I don't like about it, but I will talk about what I do like.
But that means this is a game of the week that only half of Tabletop Shop thinks is the game of the week.
Oh,
it's more just the game we're discussing.
Do you think game of the week is like an honorary position?
I feel like it is. I feel like it's a game that we desire to bring attention to.
Hey.
But maybe I was wrong.
I feel like this is something we should have figured out before. What is this, episode 19? 20?
Is it?
18? I don't know.
18. It's episode 18.
Yeah. Well, I think game of the week is just like, here's a game. Let's talk about it, This is the game we're talking about this week. Okay. But I don't hate it, Like, it's not like it's like Exploding Kittens or Phase 10, the board game or something, Like, I don't hate it. I do think that it's rather pretty. I don't think it's gorgeous, but I think it has a good table presence and it's unique, When you walk by and look at this game on the table, it's like, well, there's like 5 black discs with weird colored tiles on them, and then everybody's like, yeah, I don't know, like lining them up in different ways on their boards and all this stuff. It looks unique. And I think in general it is pretty unique. It's I like the drafting component where you can only draft a certain type, and then once there's only one type left, it all gets shoved into the middle, kind of. Like, I think that's a pretty cool mechanism. And in general, I think the setup is pretty easy too, right? Like, you don't have to take any tiles out depending on player count, do you?
No, it's player count only determines number of factory discs that you play with.
Okay. Yeah. So like Cascadia, for example, you have to take a certain amount of pieces and you don't use the rest depending on player count. So it's a little more annoying for player count. But this one, like, you get a bag and everything and all the tiles are in it. So setup is like 2 minutes, you know? And explaining the game is pretty easy too.
Like 3 minutes. Yeah, I really like this game as an intro game for honestly anybody. I was going to say new gamers, but even gamers that I already know. It's the thing. I hate teaching games, Nate. It's like one of my least favorite things to do within the hobby is teaching games. That's why I only made one how to play video back on the Way Brothers channel. It was for Splendor, like one of the easiest games you can teach. That was not a fun experience. I despise that. So all that to say, Azul is an easy game to teach for the amount of, in my opinion, entertainment and thinking that you get out of it. And further, if you have, I don't know, like any friends that may have small children that are prone to like grabbing tiny pieces and possibly eating them, this is also an ideal game because all the pieces, well, granted, I guess they look like candy since they look like Starburst, but they are large plastic pieces that are hard to miss, hard to lose, hard to misplace.
But definitely able to be grabbed and swallowed, nonetheless.
Well, it depends on how motivated you are.
The thing is, you have trouble finding a board game that doesn't have that component in it. Micro Macro Crime City, true. I guess. It's just a map and a deck of cards. So
Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. It's just a bunch of books.
Man, I gotta tell you, I only played that game once. Not a fan.
Yeah? Oh, yeah? That makes me sad. I enjoy that game.
That's good. I'm glad. Hey, you purchased it. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Cody, what else do you like about Azul? Or are you done talking about what you like about Azul?
I mean, I feel like it's a given. I like the way it looks. It is pretty. That's kind of the main draw of the game, I suppose. But I like generally how easy it is just to pull out for all the reasons I have already spoken of. But because of that, it makes it a game that if it is a late evening and we don't have too much time, or we just want to play a short game, this is one that I am totally fine with pulling out and playing. This has been Azul.
No, wait. There's more.
Azul Part 2.
Azul is not getting off that easy.
All right, start knocking Azul, dude.
First of all, it's a little too mathy for me. Mathy. I don't even know if that's really the right... I don't like the... In Castles of Burgundy, I don't mind the taking pieces, putting them in your loading bay, and then moving them, your staging area, whatever, and then moving them from there into your mat.
I know, what a dumb mechanism, right?
It's not that bad. It's not that bad. I don't like it so much in Azul because it's more complicated. You can't just load something into your staging area. And I get that there's more strategy in a way, in that regard. But in general, it does not sit very well with me. I find it more frustrating than fun, that part of the game. Sure. I like the drafting part a lot. I want to kind of, like I said, I don't hate the game, so I want to focus on what I do like, and I really do. I think the drafting mechanism is cool and interesting, and I think that's the best part of the game. I think the staging area is annoying, and I think that I don't think ahead well enough to do well in the scoring area, because I think I have gotten utterly destroyed at both games of this I've played. I don't know why. For some reason I just can't. My brain just doesn't. I haven't played it enough, or my brain just doesn't work well with how this game is set up to do well in it. But also in general, I think even if I was better at this game naturally, I think this game suffers severely from a lack of variety, because every game is actually the same of Azul. Like the tiles that come out of the bag, there will be different combinations, but not really not super interestingly different. And there's no, like, in a way this reminds me of Sagrada, because in Sagrada also you have a grid where you're placing dice, and so you draft dice back and forth for 10 rounds and you place them on your grid. That in and of itself is not that interesting. But Sagrada also has public scoring goals and personal scoring goals that change every game from game to game. And there's power cards that you can use, that you can activate maybe once or twice throughout the game to do special things and break the rules a little bit. Azul doesn't have any of that. And I think that's one thing that it really suffers from is like, if I played this game more than a few times, I would start to feel like it's a bit mundane. Like there's nothing to spice it up, you know? And so I wish it had some more spice to it. I wish it wasn't so... I wish every game wasn't pretty much exactly the same as the one before, you know?
Yeah. I hear what you're saying, but I don't really think of it that way. Because I do agree, sure, there's not like, I don't know, different player powers or different unique abilities that might show up over the course of the game. But every game is a different puzzle to solve because every game, and within every game, every round, all the pieces are different. I know it's like the same 5 colored pieces, but there's so many copies of those and they come out on different combinations on the factories that for me, I've had really good games and I've had really bad games where I just didn't play the factory tiles well enough within planning. And you can get, maybe you're really relying like on some red pieces coming out the following round, but then just with the luck of the draw on the tiles, there are like no red pieces. So now you really have to pivot and try to do something else so that you don't just get schmacked, you know?
Yeah, but because of the staging area, sometimes you're just screwed, you know? Like if you invested in a color or a couple colors and you need some of that color and you don't get it, it's like half of your staging area is now clogged and unusable this round.
In the words of Lance Riddick and Ian McShane from the new John Wick 4 movie,
Go on. Both of
such
them?
is life. Yeah, both of them.
Okay. Whatever. I don't even know where to go from that. I think, okay, what I was going to say was, I get what you're saying. Every game is its own puzzle. I think the problem is the combination of the two negative factors that I mentioned. One, that I think there's a lack of variety, and two, that this specific game just does not vibe very well with me. If it did, then the lack of variety wouldn't be such a problem, because I would enjoy the puzzle for what it was. But I don't enjoy the puzzle for what it is, so I need more variety or more twist or more interesting or more fun thrown in, and it's not. And so those two together, I think, are why I really don't like the game that much.
So what you're saying is that you need to impulse buy Azul Stained Glass of Sintra for Summer Pavilion.
I don't think I do, because I don't know much about these expansions, but I'm guessing, just riding off the popularity of the first one, there are no fundamental differences whatsoever except the color of the pieces. And yeah, so I'm not interested. Thanks.
I feel like there's a section of a Dice Tower episode where they kind of discuss that concept, but I don't remember the conclusion.
The thing is, and when these expansions have been released, like I feel like maybe Summer Pavilion was the most recent one. Everyone's so hyped. They're like, next Azul is coming out. I'm losing my mind because this game is the best thing ever, and I just don't get it. I just don't get it. It doesn't compute with me.
Let me give you an alternative. If you type in Azul in BGG, there appears another game also called Azul, but it's in all caps. And when you actually open it, it changes to blue because that's what Azul translates to.
Okay.
It has no rank. It's a 6.8 rating.
How many ratings does it have?
21.
I shouldn't be laughing.
Let me read you the first line of the description. Description. Blue is a game from the Red, Blue, Green, Greener, Greenest trilogy.
Red, blue, green, green, or greenest?
Oh, Green, Greener, Greenest. It only has 18 ratings, but it has a higher rating at 7.2.
Wow. Green, greener, greenest. Oh, that's funny. That is funny, Cody.
I feel bad now for laughing at whoever this designer
that's why I said, like,
actually did something I've never done. And
yeah.
produced a game.
No, definitely. Like, I don't want to look down on that. When you said 21 reviews and I like laughed. Actually, no, I totally respect that, and I respect somebody's ability to create a game and put it out and actually get 21 reviews. You know, like we don't have 21 reviews on our podcast, so who are we to laugh?
Exactly.
All right. Is there anything
perfect parallel?
Is there anything that you don't like about Azul?
Anything I don't like about it?
There has to be, man. There has to be. Is this in your top 50?
That is an excellent question. Where is Azul?
Because I don't even know if it's in my top 100.
Azul is 73 for me. Honestly, it should be higher than that
That
as I'm
is
looking at it here.
astonishingly low for how much praise you've given it.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I just realized. I mean, I guess the negative that I would give it is if I want it to be a bigger game or a more interesting game, it's not going to be that. I think my praise for it is that it delivers at the stage that it can deliver at and not any higher, if
So
that makes sense.
you like it for what it is. It's filling a spot for you.
Yes, exactly. If I need a light game I can pull out that fills multiple functions. It's easy to teach other people. It's easy just to play in general while still delivering a good experience. It does that. But that's kind of all it is. So if I'm going to look at a game that I would say like I really like this game, like it's super cool and innovative and gripping, I'm not really going to put Azul up in that category.
Right. So it doesn't elicit excitement, it elicits acceptance. You're like
Satisfaction.
satisfaction. That's a little bit more endearing. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I'd agree that there's some amount of maintenance within the game of kind of distributing new pieces and making them all flat and
yeah, but that's not
nice on the factories, but that's not terrible.
that's not too bad because also everyone wants to know what's coming out. It's an interesting reveal, and it doesn't take that long. It's not too much work, and people are hoping, they're looking for something. They're hoping to see what they want to see also. So it's almost part of the game in a way, as opposed to being an whatever, like a maintenance thing.
Sure. And if we're talking about Castles of Burgundy comparisons, the maintenance is much superior to the Castles of Burgundy.
It is, but it's funny. Like, where's the trade-off is that Castles of Burgundy is a significantly better game, at least in my opinion.
That is
and ranks
true. That is true.
much higher.
Yeah, Castles is 18 for me.
It's even higher for me, I think.
Wow.
And the replayability, especially if you have the anniversary edition of Castles, is just phenomenal.
Well, do you have any other cool thoughts about Azul?
I don't think so. We didn't really talk about the actual scoring. Like it's kind of got like a Scrabble scoring thing to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, I did mention that when I described it earlier.
That also
there's really not
is
much
not
more to explain
super
about it.
interesting to me. What about you?
Yeah. Well, for me, that's just part of the puzzle. Like,
Yeah.
if you have a certain structure of pieces on the board, you're going to choose pieces to load up onto your storage area that will land in a good spot to score you points. So really, for me, that's like half of the game.
I mean, it is half the game because if you don't, it's more than half the game because if you don't, if you're not thinking about that, then you really get screwed like me. So that is our game of the week, Azul.
Hey. Do you know what's even cooler than a game of the week?
I can guess.
Is a board banter.
Yes, Cody. And our board banter this week is it is a list, but it's has a bit of a stipulation to it.
A twist.
Yeah, because we wanted
a caveat.
Okay.
A distinction.
Okay. All right. So we wanted to talk about worker placement games. But I felt like it was kind of, I don't know, maybe just a little too straightforward, or I was worried we'd have overlap because we both like worker placement games a lot. And so, and at this point, I don't know, like we've started to play a lot of different games because we're not living near each other anymore. But I still feel like there could have been some overlap still because some of our favorite games that we've played together are worker placement games. So instead, we did a bit of a twist and decided to go with our top 3 worker placement games that we think we like more than the other person. Which, in theory, means we should definitely get 6 different games unless we have different opinions about who likes games more. So,
I do just have a general question for you. Out of your top 10 games, how many of them are worker placements?
Out of my top 10, how many are worker placements? What do you guess? Because it might be... It's one of my favorite mechanisms for sure.
I'm gonna guess. I'm gonna guess 4.
Actually, only 3 out of my 10. Yeah.
Wow. 5 for me.
Okay. Well, this should have been a very easy list for you.
This should be, yeah.
All right.
Well, who's going to start this off?
I will start it off, actually, because my number 3 game maybe has never been mentioned on the podcast. I'm not sure. Which is funny because ages and ages ago, this was one of the most popular games, Cody. This is
All right.
Uwe Rosenberg's Agricola.
Aha.
I don't think you've played Agricola very much. You used to own it, right?
I did. Kirsten didn't like it very much. Actually, she rather despised it, so that's why I don't own it anymore.
It's a very polarizing game. I think in general, people either really, really enjoy it or really, really just absolutely hate its guts. And despite the fact that I just said it's polarizing, I'm kind of somewhere in the middle.
It's so polarizing that I'm neutral.
I think it depends on different parts of the game. Parts of the game I would say the majority of the game I really enjoy. Sometimes it's just such a headache that you almost need to take a break mid game and like go cool down somewhere and then come back and revisit the game. But a lot of times it's a cool worker placement game in that there are the worker placement options. There's some that are all available from the beginning, and then every single round a new spot is opened up. And what's even cooler is that those spots that are opened up could be one of 2 or 3 different things every time. Towards the no, it's not that. It's that there's different rounds, and the cards could come out in a different order each round. And so you know what's going to show up every round, but there's kind of 3 rounds in a round, and so you don't know what order those actions are going to become available. And so you can plan ahead, but you're also you have to be a bit flexible because you don't know exactly when things are going to show up. But of course, it's also a very stressful game because it has this the much hated, maybe it's just this mechanism that's really polarizing, which is the feeding your workers thing. And so and this game's really punishing. Like if you don't feed your workers, you get negative points, and points are hard to come by in this game. And so, it just has this mechanism of like every round you have to feed your workers. All your workers need 2 food. And if you want a new worker, you have to build an addition to your house and then use up one of your workers to get a worker. And it's one of these worker placement games where you only get to put out a few. Like you start with 2 workers and you can go the whole game with only 2. You might get 3 or 4 or even 5, but it's difficult. It's a lot of work and you have to use a lot of actions to do it. So it's a very efficiency is the name of the game here. And
I thought it was Agricola.
It's Agricola : efficiency. It's written really tiny, so it's you gotta kind of look for it. But I think it's a lot of fun. I don't know if I would really want to own it. Like I've played it a lot. My parents owned it, and I played it quite a few times. I don't know if it's something I would ever get, just because I feel like I've played it enough. I feel like I don't want to come back to it anymore. But it still has earned its place. Like it is a really, really solid game, a very good design. And it deserves both of its spots on the top 100 that I think it has. So.
I see. I desire to play Caverna because don't get me wrong. I don't particularly dislike Agricola. I think the main reason it's lower on my list is, for one, I just don't own it anymore. Didn't really play it that much, and it is a little bit of a head scratcher, one might say, a brain burner in some ways, just because it's so important that you do well and that you plan a lot of things out, and it really kind of front loads that stress onto the game.
Yeah.
But I'm intrigued enough by it that I've heard Caverna is a good alternative, and I have at least owned and really enjoy Caverna Cave versus Cave, the much more minimized, perhaps, Uwe Rosenberg Agricola experience.
Yeah.
Which I'm excited to teach you.
I think, I'm super excited to learn it. I think Caverna is kind of on the Feast for Odin level. It's like content out the ears. Like there's so much content in the game and so many choices. I think that's what it is. I think both Caverna and Feast for Odin have this mechanism. Like there's like 50 or 60 different options that you can do on your turn. It's just like it's absolutely insane. And so that's pretty daunting to me, but it definitely intrigues me at the same time.
My understanding though is that they're largely less punishing than Agricola. Like, sure, there's a whole bunch of things you have to choose from, but maybe it's less painful if you do something wrong at some point.
Okay. Well, cool.
Because of there's so many options. But I could be wrong. That's just what the kids on the street down the road were telling me.
You mean the board game cafe? Literally. Oh no, it's not across the street anymore.
No,
It's not across the street.
the kids.
Anymore.
Yeah, different spot. Just like the kids on the street. There's like a tent, a sleeping bag, like hanging out, a lot of cigarettes, some weed, and they were just sitting around playing Agricola, and they were telling me about how much better Caverna is.
It's oddly specific that I almost believe you.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. All right. So before I get into my list, I'm just curious, how did you organize your list from 3, 2, 1? What was your criteria?
Well, from a comment you made earlier, I think you organized your list based on how much more you like the game than me. I just simply
Yes,
organized
correct.
mine based on how much I like the game.
Okay. I respect that. Mine is different because the order I'll present them in is definitely not the order I like them most in. But number 3 is Paladins of the West Kingdom. Because I know I enjoyed this more than you, but
Definitely.
I don't think it's that big of a difference. That much disparity.
I think it might be larger than you think it is. I like Paladins, and I would not go any further than that. I enjoy it every time I play it. I never feel myself wanting to play it necessarily, though. It's a weird relationship.
Yeah, it's a little bit sad in some ways. But also we're entitled to our own opinion, so sure, bro.
Absolutely.
No, actually, how I gauged these is I actually went and looked at your last updated top 100 list, at least from the end of 2022, and then compared where I have mine ranked to where you have your games ranked. Yeah, and then just separated them by that difference.
Okay.
But Paladins of the West Kingdom, we've talked about this before. It's been a game of the week on some previous, I think recent episode, actually. Good old Shem Phillips unique take on worker placement where you don't even possess your own workers. There's a pool of worker cards that you will draft from at the beginning of every round, and all the workers are different colors. And the different actions you're going on, whether they're on your own board, which is primarily what you're doing, because this is a pretty intense engine builder, but then there are some communal spaces like in the middle and the central board that you can place these workers on. But all the worker places require different combinations of workers, which is very cool. I have not played that before in other games. And I know that as I'm saying that, probably 2 minutes later, I'll suddenly think of a game where I have played that that style before.
I'm counting 2 minutes.
But whatever.
I got you.
Yeah. I like this game. I love how it looks. I love the rich green complemented by like the reds and blues, both in the pieces and in the game art. The feel of the boards is nice. I don't really know how to explain that. There's something about the texture of like the paper or the ink or something that they use on a lot of the materials that makes it feel nice and look nice. And it is a fun game. It is so big that I'm not going to try to get into explaining all the stuff because we don't got time for that.
And we've done it before. So if you want to,
we have.
If you want to know more about it, just go find our episode on it.
Yeah. I like this game. Nate likes it, but not as much as me.
Yes. And that's a fact. My number 2 almost didn't make my list, which is weird because you would think my number 3 almost went, but my number 2 almost didn't. But that's because it almost didn't meet my requirements for this list.
Whoa.
Since we said that it's games that we have to like more than the other person, that would imply that the other person probably has to have at least played the game. I didn't consider games that you haven't played because that doesn't really count.
Same for me. There's a bunch of games I threw out because of that.
So I forgot that you actually have played this game. And I think you have. I'm actually not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure you and I played it together once because it's a game that I own. It's just a little 2-player game. It's called Targi.
Yeah, I own it now, bro.
You own it.
It's on the shelf to be played.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Okay, so we did play it together once, right?
Yeah, you taught it to me.
And I remember you being very whelmed by it, like not impressed. But now you own it. So I'm a little confused.
I guess it's hard to remember my initial reactions. I was intrigued by the concept of how you're fighting the other person for control on the different columns and rows to acquire different pieces. I honestly don't remember it super well. Like how to actually play it is the thing.
Well, I'm not surprised because I don't really remember playing with you all that well. I just have a foggy memory of like, I remember sitting in your kitchen
Yeah.
playing this, I think. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so
But my memory was pleasant, so yeah.
Targi is an interesting two-player worker placement game where you have a grid of cards, and you each have three workers. Three? Yeah. Yeah, three workers that you... Wait, no, is it three or two? It's been too long since I've played this, man.
I thought it was 2.
Yeah, it's two, because you just get where they meet. So you have a grid of cards, and you each take turns placing a worker on the outside of the grid. And when you've both placed your two workers, you get the two spots where you placed them, but you also get the card... No, it's three. It's definitely three. Anyways, you get where your workers intersect.
I thought it was 4.
That's not four. Get out of here, Cody. You stop it. You quit pulling my leg down there.
All right.
Yeah, anyways, where those workers on the outside, where they intersect in the middle, you also get those cards. And so it's this weird worker placement system where you get where you go, but you also are planning towards a future spot based literally on the location of where you placed your other workers. So that's a cool concept, and you can easily thwart the other person. You can kind of guess what they're going for, and you can block them pretty easily, which makes for a fun kind of battle. I like two-player games that have kind of not even a tug of war necessarily, but it really feels like a duel. It really feels like a you versus me. I'm really fighting hard for what I want and fighting hard to stop you from getting what you want. And when those two goals, when I can make a move that I accomplish both of those goals at the same time, it feels really, really good. And that happens a lot in this game for both players. So that's something I really like. And yeah, it's kind of like, it's worker placement to draft cards, and then you use those cards to build your own grid and do special stuff. So yeah, it's a great game.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed it. I think you're probably correct in that you enjoyed it more than me, but we'll find out later. At whatever point I finally pull it off the shelf.
I have almost bought the expansion for this game multiple times, but I haven't played it with Anna yet. And so I want to play it with her and make sure she digs it before I invest in that, I think. So.
Nah, good plan. You probably didn't bring it with you then, right?
No. It's back home still.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. My number 2, you might be surprised that this is not number 1
Ooh, can
on
I guess?
my list according to the categories.
Can I guess?
What was that? Yeah, guess it.
I think this is Everdell.
You are correct.
Okay. If this wasn't, number 1 would have to be, so.
Yeah. Everdell, a game that you have had strong feelings about how much less you like this than me. I don't know if you've necessarily expressed that you like despise or even dislike this game, but I feel like each time I've expressed my adoration for this game, you've been like, nah.
Maybe I'm just playing devil's advocate, Cody.
Maybe. Admittedly, this game dropped for me a bit the last time I played it. It was my number 2 for a little bit, I think, which speaks volumes of how much I enjoyed the game.
Or how few games you had played.
I've played more games than you, I think.
Yeah, I think
I don't know. But it dropped down to 4. It may keep falling. I'm not sure. I think my disenchantment with the balance of the game itself is slowly encroaching against how pretty and delightful the game appears. Yeah, that's my basic description.
I think
your forest creatures, worker placement. You put the peoples out.
We've
Go ahead.
We've recently, I think very recently, discussed this game a little bit more in depth. Maybe it was our game of the week recently, actually, maybe. And kind of like the game's falling for both of us, but for very different reasons. For me, it's because I think the game gets worse and worse the more expansions you add in. And the core game is actually what ranks the highest for me. And because I've played it with expansions, it's continued to drop.
It's weird because I still enjoy it more with expansions.
Yeah.
But I just feel that the core game has maybe a couple flaws that aren't remedied by the expansions, but assisted by the expansions.
Do you want to get into that now, or do you just want to move on?
This podcast is going long, and I feel like we've talked about Everdell at least a few different times.
We definitely have
before, so it's cool. What's your number 1? Hit us off with that, Nate.
We have also talked about my number 1 I don't know if I would say ad nauseum, but it's come up quite a few times. It's been our game of the week before. It's a game that has been steadily rising for you, from what I've heard.
Yeah.
And this is Dune Imperium. I know that you
Yes.
like Dune Imperium. I would. This would be my. This is a hill to die on in defending the idea that I like it more. There are no doubts in my mind whatsoever that I still like this game more than you. And I don't know if I would say always will. You know, you never know what's going to happen. But
Sure.
I think this game is utterly brilliant design, and it's a combo of deck building and worker placement, and it's a very very tight, essentially race to 10 points, and the theme is just so well integrated into the game, and I think it looks beautiful. Other people would disagree with that, but I think the game looks beautiful, and I the Rise of Ix expansion is very, very good, and the Immortality expansion is awaiting back in the States for me to come home and open it. So I can't speak to that yet, but looking forward to playing
That's the real reason you want to come home.
it. Moving on.
Yeah, Dune Imp. Good game. I also thoroughly enjoy it, but I will concede that you probably thoroughly enjoy it more thoroughly than I thoroughly enjoy it.
Yeah, not redundant whatsoever.
Nope, not at all. It is curious that you would place Dune Imperium as your number one. Maybe not too curious because it kind of makes sense. But it's curious because my number one, Nate, do you have a guess?
It's curious. Is it a Dune related thing?
No.
Okay, I don't know why it's curious, Cody. I am curious as to why it's curious.
It is The Lost Ruins of Arnak.
Ah,
Also, a
makes
deck
sense.
builder worker placement combo.
Okay. Yeah, that's a no-brainer for your number one.
Yeah, yeah. The thing is, this game isn't incredible for me, but I know that you somewhat despise the game, so
You know what's funny?
I definitely enjoy this more than you.
I don't even know if I would say I would despise it. Here's what I can say about this game.
Do you loathe it?
No.
Abhor it?
No. I have played this game once. I remember almost nothing whatsoever. It is completely wiped from my memory. I don't remember at all how the game
Wow.
functions. Like, at all. I don't remember anything. It was like such
Crazy.
just gone with the wind, in one ear out the other. I don't know what the right expression is, but it was like it's completely forgettable for me, and I don't know why, and I've never been interested in playing it again. So yeah.
Nate, what if the reason that you can't like remember the game at all, it's much deeper, it's much more intense than you can even realize. Maybe it's because the game was just such an incredible experience, like it just destroyed all other games in your mind, and your brain rebelled because it realized that after playing Arnak, all other games would just fall short, and so you had to wipe it from your memory so that you could still enjoy the hobby going forward.
Listen, like I said, I don't really remember Arnak. I'm sure it's a fine game, but I would be very embarrassed if that was how I truly felt about it.
It definitely would not be my top one or even make my top three at that point.
I think maybe even more the reason is that I had already played Dune and they were being compared to each other, and maybe it just couldn't live up. And we would both agree, at least I hope, that it doesn't live up to Dune. But
Oh, for sure.
yeah.
I mean, the only comparison is that it's a combo of some worker placement and some deck building.
Yeah.
Beyond that, they were very different games.
When was the last time you played Arnak?
It's a good question. It was before we moved. I'd say maybe like 3 or 4 months ago.
Is that a keeper then? Like really a keeper for you?
Yeah, Kirsten really likes it, and I don't like it as much as she does, but it's actually grown on me over time. There's an expansion for it, Expedition Leaders,
Yeah.
where you get like player powers, which is something the game needs. So I'm kind of intrigued to possibly purchase that soon.
Yeah, I think that came out like really quickly after the game came out, like almost like it was a predetermined expansion.
Which would make sense.
Some would
Anyway.
say that it should have just been in the game from the beginning, but that's just me. So other games like Dune Imperium, maybe they did that. So
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah,
It's marketing.
It's,
It's different styles.
It's a very good point.
Different schemes.
Essentially,
Thanks, man.
my number one is significantly better and more thought out than your number one. So, and you know what's funny? We would both agree.
Yep.
All right. Well, with that, see you, folks.
In some realms, yep. And remember, worker placement games are not an overused genre. Please keep making them. Just make good ones. Folks, we're back. Except we're not. We're just here to say bye. We're back to say bye. Nate, say bye.
We didn't go. Did we go somewhere? We didn't go anywhere, right? So we were always here. We didn't come back. We were always here.
Yeah, we're always here. We never leave. We're always in the studio, constantly recording.
Studio. Okay.
Farewell.